Okay. Well, again, thanks for coming. This is a wonderful facility. I want to thank the Deerfield Beach Historical Society, Judy, and the rest of the crew here. They put the little decorations on the table and the whole thing. And it's if you ever have events, or they have a lot of events here. They got art classes and all kinds of great stuff. So I recommend this facility very, very highly. And I'd like to thank Stacy. Stacy, you want to wave? She's our bookseller from Murder on the Beach / Hookline. They're fantastic and they're very supportive of the local writing community. So thank you, Stacy. And if you want to buy a book, she's got them over there. Let's see here. Okay, so first I'm going to talk a little bit about the new book, Sanctuary Motel. It came out a few weeks ago. Then I'll open up for questions. I hope you all have some questions about the writing life or how I come up with ideas or whatever. And then you're in for a little bit of a treat, maybe, perhaps. I have a little entertainment. Emphasis on the little. All right, so how did I come up with the premise for Sanctuary Motel? Not surprisingly, with that title, much of the action takes place in a motel, is my name. And this is not a fancy, concierge-laden 5-star hotel, but a seen better days, 14-unit eyesore. And I got the idea that it's a combination of sort of two things. One, I was watching the network news, and a story came on about this municipality that was transforming. They were taking some abandoned motels and they were turning into housing for the homeless. And now that's a pretty good idea. And that in combination with my lifelong fascination of motels, which, not hotels, motels, and it started as a young age. My father, bless his heart, was what you might call a frugal man, and we went on our twice yearly vacations. We would go to the beach, which Ocean City, Maryland. Has anybody been to Ocean City? There used to be, I don't know if it's still there, a motel called the Stowaway. Remember the Stowaway? It's on the boardwalk at like 21st Street. And it wasn't a chain. It was sort of an independent, seedy, rundown, threadbare carpet motel. And I thought it was awesome. I would go into the basement of the motel and they would have vending machines, and they wouldn't have like Coke or Sprite or Doritos or Fritos. They would have these weird off-brand sodas with unusual flavors, and I just thought that it was like the essence of high living. Strawberry kiwi soda. I was like, yeah. I didn't know what kiwi was, but I was like, okay, it's pretty good. And then we would stay at, we'd spend 1 week at the beach, or 1 week at the beach, and we'd go to a state park in West Virginia. And we would stay at the lodge, which was comparable to a motel, at this rustic state park in West Virginia. And I tell you, the carpeting was about as thick as wax paper, and as furry. And they had this one, it wasn't a pinball machine. There was a machine in the basement that was like a baseball thing, but you actually got to turn the handle and hit the bat. It was like a pinball chassis, right? And the ball would come down the chute and you would turn the bat and try to swing. And I would just spend hours and hours there rather than communing with nature. So I thought these cut-rate motels were really cool. How many people here have been driven down 95 or up 95 and passed through the South Carolina-North Carolina border, a very famous roadside attraction south of the border? How many people know that there was a motel there? Yeah, how many people stayed at that motel? Yes! And it was exactly as you might imagine. Pedro everywhere. Pedro ashtrays, little Pedro this and that. And they had a 9-hole outside golf course that was lighted so you could play it at night. And they didn't have greens for the greens, they had AstroTurf carpets. and they were all like mounded. So you would hit up on the green, and your ball would roll off, and you like chip it up, and your ball would roll off, and it was like impossible. But it was so cool to play at night, and I was like 9 years old, so I was a kid. So later, many years later, my wife and I, we packed up our 2 kids into our minivan, and we took a 7-week trip across country. And this was pre-smartphones, so we didn't really, we didn't really know our schedule to that the degree of confidence we could book the hotels ahead of time. So we would determine, all right, in 3 hours we'll be in some city. Let's call ahead and see what kind of room we can get. So we didn't stay at for the most part, we didn't stay at super diving places because, well, I was traveling with my wife. But we didn't stay at the super high-end either. So we are in southern Minnesota. It's about 2 a.m. and we have somehow botched our timing. And we're exhausted, got 2 cranky kids, and we're looking for a place to stay. So there's this town called Albert Lee, Minnesota. Who here has ever been to? No way!
Grew up 45 minutes. Albert Lee.
Okay, you don't want to hear what I'm.
No, I do.
So we were in Albert Lee, Minnesota, and I thought, well, is this like the 5th Beatle or something? I didn't know where we were. And we pull up to this motel, and I forget, it was a low-rent motel, because that was all that was there in Albert Lee, Minnesota. And it's 2 a.m., and I go up to the front desk, and I'm like, excuse me, we need a room. I was like, sorry, we don't got any rooms. They go, we just need a room, please. We've been traveling for hours. I got 2 kids. Come on. Sorry. Where's the next place? 50 miles down the road. We can't make 50 miles. We have nothing. Well, we have one room. The door doesn't shut. Like the door doesn't. It doesn't latch. It doesn't lock. It doesn't latch. And we're like, so we took this room, and the door doesn't close. And we're in Albert Lee, Minnesota. Like, I, in my head, think Albert Lee is like the home of serial killers. Right? Am I far off?
No.
Probably not. Probably not.
There's a meat rendering plant just down the road.
Okay, all right. So we go in the room, and it's a hideous room. And we pile up, we close the door as far as we can, we move the furniture up against the door. And we really shouldn't have been that concerned, because if someone broke in to accost us, the giant cockroaches would have fended them off. So, one more story off the road. We're farther west, weeks later, we're driving into San Francisco. We didn't have a place, and we thought, all right, well, let's call up. I have stayed near Union Square before. I tell my wife, that's a nice area, safe. Like, okay, so we got this motel, hotel, cheap, whatever. And it was just a few blocks off of Union Square. Is anybody familiar with San Francisco? If you go a few blocks off of Union Square, you end up in a place called the Tenderloin. Let me say, that's not a place for 2 little boys or 2 grown adults. So we stayed in the Tenderloin for it was like 3 days. We booked it for 3 days. And we're like, so I told my oldest son, we had to go out and get something. Okay, here are the rules. You stay 3 feet on my right side. You do not look anyone in the face, and you walk as fast as you possibly can. So anyway, so I've always had this fascination with motels, and I thought, what better ideas to combine those 2 ideas? All right. Are there any questions about being a writer before I get into the rest of my little shtick here? Any questions about books, or when I come up with ideas? You guys know it all. Well, all right, I'll tell you a little bit about how I came to be a writer, because I was not always interested in writing. Back in high school, I was a numbers guy. I was mostly interested in anything that had nothing to do with the classics you were supposed to read in high school. So I never read James Joyce or William Faulkner or Herman Melville. I think he wrote a book about some aquatic creature or something, and I never read it. I would be reading Isaac Asimov and Robert Heinlein, and then at some point Stephen King and Dean Koontz. That's what I would read, not these classics, which aggravated my father, I think, because he was an old English teacher. He didn't like that. So I went to college and I became a mechanical engineer, and I didn't have to take a single English class in college, which was great because I didn't like English. I didn't like engineering either, which I found out. And I went back to business school, and I did that for a while, and I realized, no, I don't really like this either. So I said to my wife, I said, Janet, I think I want to try writing. And then I picked her up off the ground, and she fainted, revived her, and I wrote a few short stories that didn't stink, and I took an adult ed class at the local high school. And I got a lot of encouragement from the instructor. She said, Alan, except for the 50 semicolons on the first page, this is not so bad. So I kept working at it. I took workshops at a place in Bethesda, Maryland called the Writer Center, which was pretty awesome. And I got into a critique group with other writers, and I kept learning and writing. And so I wrote a novel. And then I realized it really wasn't very good. So I'm like, all right, put that aside. Most writers have what they call a trunk novel, their first novel, so I practice. So I'm like, okay. Wrote another novel. It was better than the first, but it still wasn't very good. So I realized I probably don't know enough about crime fiction, being a guy out of the suburbs. I needed to learn more about what I was writing about. So I knocked over a 7-Eleven. I took a Citizens Police Academy, which, if you've never done it, I don't know whether they do it in Broward County or Palm Beach or whatever, but you go to the police department and they show you how policing is done. So this course consisted of about 12 weeks, a couple hours once a week, one night, and they would do each night, they would do a different aspect of police business. They would do, we saw a canine demonstration in the parking lot, it was really cool. The gang guys came in and told us about gangs, and the drug guy came in, and he opened a suitcase full of the different drugs you could find on the streets of where I was, which was eye-opening. We went to the shooting range, and the first and only time I ever shot a gun. So after like 2 hours of instruction, safety instruction, they said, all right, I'm going to take you out to the range. And I shot this gun, I think they had 10 shots. I put 10 right in the middle circle. And the instructor comes over and goes, wow, what do you do for a living? I go, well, writer? And he goes, no, really, what do you do for a living? And this is outside D.C. He thought I was with the CIA or the State Department. So nobody messed with me. And I've transferred that skill to the carnival game where you shoot the water in the clown's mouth and pop the balloons. I'm awesome at that. Seriously. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, Citizens Police Academy. So one of the things we did at the Citizens Police Academy was go on a ride-along, which you get in, you go with a cop, and they take you along the streets and you do a ride-along. So we encountered a DIP, a dip, drunk in public, entertaining. And then we get this call on the radio. We have reports of men running through the community center parking lot with rifles. Like, whoa. So the cop I was with, she flips on the sirens, we go screaming through the mean streets of Herndon, Virginia. We end up in the parking lot of the community center. And there's already a cop car there with the doors open, the cops are not there. And she parks the car, she grabs the shotgun that is mounted between the two seats and says, don't go anywhere. And I say, don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. And she takes off. And there I am under the lights, doors are open, guys running around with guns. So I get down in the seat and I crouch down so I can just barely see over the top of the windshield. It turned out there was kids playing with air rifles, which was dangerous. So anyway, so I took that experience and made it the first scene of my novel called Ride Along. And I thought the novel came out great. And so to get an agent, you have to write what's called a query letter and try to get them to read the book and then take you on as a client. So I said, all right, I wrote this great query letter, and I'm all set. I sent it out to 100 agents and I got 100 rejections. And I learned that my definition of great is different than an agent's definition of great. Anyway, so I wrote a couple more books, and I got an agent. He couldn't sell it, and I got the impression that he wanted to concentrate on nonfiction, because he said, Alan, I want to concentrate on nonfiction. So I had to get another agent, and then the third agent I had, the second agent I had, sold my first book. And that came out in 2010, and since then I've written, this is my 11th book. All right. So, hopefully this won't be too painful. Are there any questions? Any more questions?
Were you
Yeah.
working full time while this going, or were you?
I was a stay-at-home dad. My wife made the money, and I changed the diapers. Some other questions? Yes.
So what's on your agenda next?
Well, this is Sanctuary Motel is the first in a series. So the next book in the series will be out next October, and I just finished 70,000 words on the first draft. I also write short stories. I've got 2 coming out next month, and then like 8 or 10 coming out in the next year. So I have a lot of short stories. It's weird publishing. Sometimes the book stuff's coming out, sometimes not.
Now, usually science guys, like, not jumping to mystery, they jump into like science fiction or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, because it's something they really know about.
Right, right. The question is, why am I not writing science fiction or something technical? That's a darn good question. Maybe it's too boring.
Science fiction that I read, you know, these guys definitely have science backgrounds. Generally, you know.
Yeah. It's a good question. Project Hail Mary. Did you read that one yet?
I did.
That's great. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? I don't have a good answer for that. All right. So,
Alan, who designed the cover page?
the cover's awesome, isn't it? I had nothing to do with it. The person at the publisher. Yeah, it's very Edward Hopper-esque, I think. All right, so my second and third books were part of an abbreviated series, and they featured Channing Hayes, who was a stand-up comic. So back then, 2011, I thought, hey, wouldn't it be fun if I developed a open mic night quality stand-up routine to do in my launch events? Bob's like, oh my God, we have to sit through this? Yes. So I worked up some shtick, and I now will reprise that for you. Some of it's updated. I did some research. I did some research for that. Went to some open mic nights. Have you been to open mic comedy nights? They can be just torturous. Oh my word! I hope I'm not that bad. All right. So it's hard to write good comedy, and if I spent all my time writing new material, I wouldn't have actually time to write my new stuff, which would be good stuff. So I know what you're all thinking. How will I be able to stand 10 minutes of side-splitting laughter? You don't have to worry. I should add that not everything I say is intended to be funny. Some things are serious. You can tell which is which by whether or not I get any laughs. Laughs, funny. No laughs, not meant to be funny. Everybody on board with that? Okay. Whenever I do a book talk, I always get this question. How long does it take to write a book? Well, one of my typical books has about 80,000 words in it. So if I type 40 words a minute, or 50 minutes per hour, I need 10 minutes to check my email and do Facebook. It takes about 40 hours to get 80,000 words written. That's 1 week of full-time work. Of course, then it takes 6 months to put all the words in the right order. As a writer, I'm a writer, but I was never very good with grammar. I don't know a dangling participle from a flying Willendo. I had a gerund once, but I left the door to its cage open and it escaped. Yeah, you know, grammar jokes are not usually that funny. I do try to never split infinitives. I had a dangling modifier, but a little bit of its elective surgery cleared that up. I'm a writer. So it really bothers me when people use the wrong words. I think they're such oxymorons. That's pretty good. Come on! Come on! All right. Unless you're a big bestseller, writing is a low-paid occupation. I'd like to make some money, so I'm thinking about switching to doing open mic nights. At least I get free drinks. If you're a writer, you will encounter rejection. A lot of rejection. We have writers in the audience, am I right? Yes. That's why you need a really, really thick skin. And I'm used to rejection, I really am. But lately it seems like things are getting worse. Prince Makinu of Nigeria keeps refusing my checks. Harry and David won't let me join their Fruit of the Month club. Neither of them. Not Harry, not David. Netflix refuses to allow me to subscribe. They don't take anything. Rejection just follows me around. The Salvation Army won't take any of my old clothes. What's worse, they won't take any of my new ones either. I have a degree in mechanical engineering and an MBA from MIT. I suppose I could have been a Wall Street guru or been a consultant to corporate CEOs about strategic issues. Instead, I decided to actually benefit society by becoming a mystery writer. Anybody have a boss they'd like me to murder for them? Did I mention I'm a writer, not a comedian? We're getting there, folks. Hang in there. Writing's a great gig, but some writers are deluded. If you want to be a surgeon, you don't just operate after watching a few episodes of Grey's Anatomy. If you're a pilot, we have a pilot here, you don't just fly a plane, even if you are a Delta Platinum traveler. But as a writer, you're perfectly qualified if you've read a few books. To be a writer, you don't even have to take a typing test. Heck, you have to be more qualified to be an office temp than to be a writer. That's out of my routine. All right, every writer I know anticipates anxiously getting reviews and blurbs. So far, I've been fortunate to get good ones for Sanctuary Motel. Orloff has concocted a truly memorable character in Mess Hopkins. Sanctuary Motel serves as a perfect introduction to this sincere, sometimes zany leading man. I hope to see Mess in many more books to come. And that's from Eli Craner, Edgar Award-winning author of Don't Know Tough and Ozark Films. All right, thank you, Eli. Who knew that doing good could lead to so much trouble? Mess Hopkins' Heart of Gold will cost him and take readers on a wild ride. Sanctuary Motel offers room for anyone looking for humor, heart, and hope, but no HBO. That's from Lori Raider Day, Edgar Award nominated, and Agatha Anthony and Mary Higgins Clark Award-winning author of Death at Greenway and The Death of Us. And our very own Aline Condell said this in last Sunday's Sun Sentinel. Orloff delivers a compact, action-packed Sanctuary Motel and a promising start for more stories about Mess and his mission. I always thank Aline for her generosity. But my favorite review is about my first book, Diamonds for the Dead, and it's from my son, Stuart. No offense, Dad, but that book is way too good to have been written by you.
Now he's the comedian.
He's the comedian. All right. We're almost there. Home stretch. All right, top 5 things I get asked at book signings. Number 5, can I have a part in the movie version? Of course, that's usually my son doing the asking. Number 4, if I give you a great idea, can you write the book and split the money with me? Yes, just come up after this and tell me your ideas and we'll be off. No. Do I know James Patterson? No, but I did meet him once. He seemed like a nice guy. Number 2, have you written any good books? And the number 1 thing I get asked at book signings, do you know where the bathrooms are? Someone say encore? Okay, yes, okay. 5 best things about being a writer. All right, number 5, people think you know stuff. Number 4, showering is optional. Number 3, a business trip means going to the bookstore. Yes. Number 2, those voices in your head are supposed to be there. And the number 1 thing about being the best thing about being a writer, casual Friday becomes underwear Friday. Thank you, Deerfield Beach. All right, so you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter. I try to be entertaining and amusing. I have a mailing list. I send out newsletters once every 5 years, it seems. Not too often. You can sign up there. If you need books, Stacy's here, and it'd be lovely to sign books for you afterwards. Did you have a question? Mess. Well, this is Pat. Pat and I grew up on the same street when we were kids, since second grade probably. Kindergarten. I don't know if you ever were up in my room. I don't know, John. I don't remember. But if you were, you would know that Mess is a messy guy. Some people said when I was a kid I was a messy child. So that's where it came from. His room is a mess. Some might infer that his life is a mess as well. So I just thought it would be fun to.
So first, I just want to say I've known you a while, right? I had no idea how fun that you were this funny.
Me neither. Well, whatever.
Yeah, I've always just, I mean, usually you're quiet and,
Usually I'm silent.
dry. You are funny.
Usually I'm silent, but I thought a mime thing wouldn't go very well today.
So I just wanted to say that. And then question, no, not candy, because I asked you that before and you said no, so let me rephrase that. Would you please talk a little bit about book 2?
Book 2, well, okay, so most of my books are standalones, but I knew going in this was going to be a series.
Yeah.
So for the writers out there, and for the readers, you construct your world, or at least I did, a little bit differently, knowing that there are going to be more books down the road. I wanted to have a robust cast of characters that I could then have stories or side plots or whatever for the different books down the road. And also I wanted to make it that they could have multi-book character arcs. So usually in a book, you try to have the characters transform themselves over the course of one book. But with a series, you sort of have a little more leeway to do it over multiple books as well. So sort of the theme is emerging that the second book will be a little bit more about Mess's family. And I don't want to go into too much more because I'll probably change it all here.
But he's still at the motel?
Yeah. It's going to be, that's sort of the premise. Is he's in this motel, for those of you who haven't read the book yet. His parents are off traveling the world, and he's running this motel. He's more interested in helping others that are in need of a place of sanctuary, they're escaping some bad situation, than he is in making money. And that creates conflict with Mess and his uncle, who sort of, he thinks he's overseeing the goings-on, or whether he's not. And,
Have you seen the Florida Project?
I watched the beginning of it. Any other questions? All right, well, again, thank you so much for coming. There's cake. I want to express the fact that my brand is cake. Cake is part of my brand, and my calic. Every time I go to the hair cuttery, they say, "Do you know you have a calic?" I'm like, "Really? Gee, I've only had my hair for 50-some years, 60-some years. Oh, I have a calic? Yeah, it's part of my brand."
I owe you an apology. I did read everything in the Sun Sentinel book. I forgot your name.
It's Alan.
And I want one of your books.
All right, here's the cake cutter. Now we can begin. All right, so mingle and cake and whatever.
I feel terrible. I knew I was going to be here, but I